911 operators of Reddit. What is the pettiest reason someone has called 911? Woman called because her pregnant 14 or 15-year-old granddaughter who lived with her and whose bed was the couch wouldn't get off the couch so she could use it to watch TV. The woman felt very indignant when I asked, what exactly do you want the police to do? Officer cleared the call with, she's got nowhere else to go. Grandma said it's okay for her to stay. Also, lots of ambulance calls for I have a stomachache, which was code for I need a free pregnancy test. People who get cut off in traffic are probably the worst inane callers. Like, oh so this happened 3 hours ago. You don't remember the road it happened on. You don't know the registration of the void. There was no traffic crash. And there is not even the insinuation that either party involved were under influence of substances. Noise complaints us a mother-in-law. People calling the emergency line to complain about being arrested earlier. One once complaining about being charged for abusing the emergency line. I've had a woman call emergency because their sister was refusing to share their food at a cinema. But what is probably more insane is the serious incidents that are started by inane and petty things. Once had a serious FTV between a mother and daughter. The mother stabbed the daughter after an argument over the color of cupcake batter. So sick of reckless driver calls. People get so mad that no, we cannot do anything about the person you saw 10 minutes ago speeding or swerving. They really expect every cop in the area to go there and look for a car that's probably already at its destination. You tell people this, and the tone they take like, well I sure hope he doesn't kill anyone. Like, sir, I promise even if we did go out there, we are not finding the damn car. Get a dash cam if you're that concerned all the time. I received a call on an emergency line from a 90-something-year-old lady asking me what lamp she should put in her bedroom. I told her I did not understand and that the sheriff's office was not the correct place to ask. Eventually she got upset and said fine, I'll call 911. They'll help me there. I tried to tell her that 911 would just go back to me and it was a misuse of an emergency line. But it was too late. 15 seconds later 911 rings. I answer and lo and behold it was the lady asking what lamp should I get for my bedroom. I'm not a 911 operator, but here we go. When I was in college 90% of my professors were retired or still serving police officers. I was studying police foundations. One of the instructors was telling us about an older lady whose husband had recently passed away. She was dialing 911 every day because she was lonely and wanted a police officer to come and keep her company. They had tried explaining to her that 911 was for emergencies only, but she couldn't help it. To her, she was alone and wanted to have someone with her, so it seemed like an emergency. Eventually my professor was the one to respond to the call, so he went to her house and sat with her. She made tea and put out some cookies, and they sat and talked until he had a call. In his eyes it was public service, so he made a deal with her if she agreed to stop calling for this reason. Once every rotation of shifts, approximate once a week, he would go to her house and have tea and cookies. She never called 911 again for that reason, and every week he'd stop by and have tea and cookies until she passed away a few years later. He finished the story saying something like this: we should never forget that, although law enforcement is a big part of our job, public service comes in many forms. Plenty of old people call 911 because they just can't rationalize who else to call when something happens like a power outage. But they're usually very nice and don't seem to understand that 911 isn't the place. That said, had a guy call 911 because he lived in a gated community and the gate was stuck open, like it wouldn't close. Nobody was trapped or anything, and he said, and I quote, "Well, I don't have a number for emergency maintenance, so I figured you guys would know somebody." In general, we also get a lot of calls of suspicious people. That's just guy sitting in his truck for a little too long. Always really pisses me off to talk to the nosy-ass people who are so paranoid of everyone that they waste my time telling me the black dude just doesn't look like he belongs here. Years ago I worked in tech support for an ISP And we had an elderly lady call us once because she was stuck in her bathroom. The bathroom door was stuck. She couldn't budge it. And she didn't have any phone numbers memorized. She didn't want to tie up 911. So she hit radio. She had called us earlier in the day for help with her internet or email. One of our supervisors called the woman's local police non-emergency line and they went out to help her. If you want an opposite story kind of. Once I called the police non-emergency line because I heard gunshots outside of my very Canadian, very suburban house. The officer took my report and then said, well, should this ever happen again, I'd like to encourage you to call 911 and not the reporting desk. My husband and I also spent 15+ minutes debating if we should call or not, and the officer had questions about that too. Not a dispatcher, but when I was in EMS we were dispatched to a psych call. When we got there, this lady was standing outside her house ready to go to the hospital. On the way to the hospital I was talking to her and trying to get her vitals when she told me there was nothing wrong with her, that she heard if a mother-in-law member was in the hospital and needed a ride. So she called 911. Cops met us at the hospital for her. I'm not one, but one of my old neighbors called 911 on the other one for watering their lawn on a day they weren't allowed to. During the summer even number addresses can water MWF and odd number THSAT or something like that to conserve water. Yup. Also this was in an area of 2 mother-in-law plus homes, so basically just rich people pettiness to the maximum. A woman called 911 right as she drove into the county I worked for. She was screaming about how the Burger King employees need to be arrested because they threw a mother-in-law shake at her. I asked clarifying questions. Then ask her if she's sure it was in our county, because we don't have a Burger King in that area, but the neighboring county does. She called me an idiot and to just send the police. Come to find out, she ordered her food, but then didn't want it because she didn't know there were a bunch of NIs working there. The manager threw her mother-in-law shake through her car window. Another one. A very pregnant lady called 911 because the restaurant she ordered from got her order wrong and wouldn't refund her. She threw the wrong order of food at the worker, who placed his own 911 call for assault. That probably didn't work out in her favor. There is usually a local, non-life or death, police line that you can and should call if you are upset about your neighbor's loud music at 3 AM. Please use this line. Imagine someone is bleeding out in the street because they have been stabbed 17 times in a mugging, struggling with the last of their energy. They call 911 and have to wait because you called to complain about McDonald's mother-in-law shake machine not working. You are taking up precious resources. 911 is not the manager. Don't be that Karen. People don't seem to understand that there's only a fixed amount of people working in the center and those lines are always often tied up too. Anyone who's used a phone before has at one point in their lives had to wait a brother-in-law years on hold. So why should they think the emergency call centers have infinite workers and lines? I'm not an operator, but I'll share a story. I was younger, probably around 11, 13 years old, 2001, 2003. My dad gave me his old cell phone to play with. It didn't have any service so it couldn't make calls. Bored one summer day, I decided to try calling 911 just to see what would happen. Well, the call went through and I instantly hung up. 5 minutes later, an officer shows up at our house. He said I was nearby and just came over to make sure everything was okay. I explained my mistake and felt really bad for wasting his time. I was surprised that the cops were able to track the disconnected cell phone, and this was way back before smartphones. Let's see. A person in a suburban neighborhood called to report a group of youths on bikes, skateboards, etc. said they were up to no good. When asked what they were doing that constituted a crime or was dangerous, the caller admitted that they hadn't seen anything as such, but they just knew that these kids were up to no good. Didn't even dispatch anyone for that. During a very busy few minutes, some idiot with a scanner decided to call 911 and tell me that one of the local EMS agency's radio channel had an open mic. Basically, That refers to when a radio is accidentally activated and transmitting, potentially picking up any sounds conversation nearby, usually for an extended period of time. Since we did 911 call taking and dispatch, I was actively listening to said radio channel as this person called. There was no open mic. On a fairly regular basis, people would call 911 because someone wouldn't return property that they had lent. This is 100% not a police issue. As soon as I learn that the property was given loaned willingly, it makes it a civil, that is non-criminal, non-police issue. On the other hand, this one initially seemed petty but actually wasn't. A guy called, and I had a difficult time understanding exactly what he was saying. He was definitely talking about something coming out of his toilet, so I thought he was calling about a plumbing issue. Unfortunately, this is not unheard of, though it is certainly not a good reason to call 911 after listening a bit more. However, I realized that he was reporting demons coming out of his toilet. He was genuinely and very distressed by this, and I didn't suspect that it was a joke or prank. Unfortunately, there was no one I could send right away, so I decided to try to help. I told him to put the toilet lid down. He took my advice and what would, the demons stopped coming out. He was very appreciative. We still sent someone once they were available only a few minutes later. Obligatory not a 911 operator. 8 or 9 years ago, my husband and I had a couple of acquaintances over for dinner one night. They were from our local poker group. The four of us were having a great time when one of the guys accidentally knocked over the other guy's phone and cracked its screen. The second guy went mental. He started yelling at the first guy and demanded that he pay to repair the screen. The second guy agreed to it, but the first guy kept yelling and yelling. He called 911 and the cops came. He told the cops that the second guy broke his phone and he wanted to father-in-law a police report. He asked the cops to force the second guy to give him money to repair his phone. The cops were so confused and annoyed. We were mortified because it happened at our house and the cops knew our landlord. We never invited him to our house again. Obligatory not a 911 operator. But when I was in community college, one of my classmates shadowed an EMT for a school project. The whole time he was shadowing them, they only got called out once to get a developmentally disabled kid out of a high school bathroom stall that he was refusing to leave. Not so much a misuse, but I remember how disappointed my classmate was. He didn't end up becoming an EMT. Not the operator but the caller. When I was 3, I called 911 because I was convinced that my grandmother denying me dessert was child abuse. The police actually came to the house, probably because I said the words child abuse. My father asked if I understood why what I did was bad. I told him, "Are you kidding? I got to see a real police officer." I was trying to say officer. Not an operator, but once someone called cops on me for leaving an unattended bag in the park by our house. Thing was, it was in a town of less than 1,000 people. Tiny park. I was there the whole time. I set it on the table while I played with my young kids. The entire park is visible from any direction. I was never more than 100 foot from my son's diaper bag and the cops came and seemed really confused when they saw me and asked if it was my bag. I was like, yeah. Then they told me why they came and I was floored. They were annoyed with whoever called and left without further questioning. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.